Hello. There we go. Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Thanks for making it live. If you're here live, go ahead and let me know in the chat who you are and where you're signing on from. And if you're catching the replay, hello, welcome, and let me know if you have any questions once this is all posted up. Happy to clarify anything in the comment section of the video or on a Facebook message afterwards. But some of you I know are new to the group, so just to introduce myself, my name is Amanda Baduris. I am a licensed psychologist in Oregon. I have my own solo private practice where I do therapy intensives for both individuals for trauma recovery as well as couples intensives for people who are just looking to get reconnected to their partner faster. And for those in, primarily I'm doing trauma therapy intensives, people who are looking to just feel better faster. So that's what this group is all about, is taking all of the knowledge that I have learned and giving you kind of bits and pieces into what is this whole therapy intensive kind of program, asset, a service that you can basically add to all of your offerings for how you support people. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how you handle a consultation call for an intensive. And if I'm looking off over on this side, I've got my notes to make sure I cover all the important points. But just to kind of give you an overview, the last video, which is posted as a replay, so go back and watch that if you haven't gotten a chance. But I talk a little bit about the specifics around how you're assessing for a good fit. So that is part of the consultation call. There are some specific questions you want to be asking to see if people are already in therapy, what kind of does their support system look like, medications they're on, things like that. So go back and watch that one if you want more information about what should I be assessing for in a consultation call. But today I want to talk a little bit more about, okay, other than assessing, how are you kind of selling the consultation? How are you encouraging people to book a consultation with you? Part of that comes from the website specifically, how you're marketing that. Some of it comes from how are other therapists, other professionals marketing your services. What do they know about it? What are they telling these clients that are calling you? But in terms of how you are answering any questions on the phone or Zoom call or email, however you're kind of getting a first contact with a potential client, there's a few different things that I've seen kind of recur in these consultation appointments. So number one, again, is does this person even know that you offer therapy intensives? That's something that you want them to know, whether that's on your website, if that's the specific reason that they're calling you. Sometimes you may know that from if you're returning a voicemail, they say, I'm calling about your intensives. Sometimes you might know that if you have like a website contact form, people might have an option to click, like I'm interested in talking about your therapy intensive offering. So you might know that already coming in. And also if you're deciding that you're transitioning mostly to offering therapy intensives as opposed to the traditional 45, 50, 60-minute appointment, that might be the only way that you're working with people. So people might already know that kind of coming in, that that's what you're offering. But so number one, like, do you even have the context of why are they having a consultation with you? Is it about the intensives? Is it not? When I was still taking weekly or biweekly clients, I did have a contact form on my website where I would say, are you here for weekly or biweekly sessions, or are you interested in talking about an intensive program? Encouraging people, even if you're interested in talking about what an intensive is, please click this option, because then I tell them to, expect that we're going to take maybe closer to 30 minutes because there's a lot of more information to cover there as opposed to a 15 to 20 minute consultation for weekly therapy. So there's some ways that you can kind of help gain a sense for yourself of how to prepare for that consultation, knowing, am I talking about intensives? Am I talking about weekly therapy? Even if someone's coming in for weekly therapy, do I want to plan to talk with them about intensives? So there's a few different things that you want to be thinking about big picture. So Number one, to be thinking about, okay, so if someone is calling in knowing that they want to talk about a therapy intensive, they've seen it on your website, their psychiatrist recommended them to you because they know you offer intensives. If someone already knows you offer an intensive, you don't really have to tell them about that option, right? That would be something that you would tell people who are calling for more of that weekly standard kind of approach in therapy. So we'll talk about that in a second. But for the people who say, I'm scheduling this consultation with you because I hear you offer therapy intensives, I read on your website about how great this is, this sounds like something exactly what I need. We're going to talk about that first because obviously that's the easiest way to kind of start getting into some of that information. They already have a sense of this is going to be something different. So within that experience, you want to think about, okay, so what are their goals for the intensive? Why are they booking a consultation for an intensive as opposed to a weekly session and every other week session? Like what is it about an intensive that they're looking for, right? So you want to get a sense of how have they been struggling in the traditional therapy model? Are they frustrated because they feel like they're not making progress on their goals fast enough? Are they feeling like, I've been hearing about this EMDR, brain spotting, IFS stuff. My therapist doesn't do that, so I'm looking for a different kind of approach. I feel like this is what I hear a lot. I feel like I've got a lot of insight, like I really understand myself, I've got all the awareness, but I don't know what to do with it, right? I still need to feel that shift in something. So you're already getting a sense of, there's almost like a screening element to this of how much do you need to give the psychoeducation about what a therapy intensive is and why it's helpful. Would they be a good fit for it? But you're also just getting that sense of kind of where is their buy-in around a therapy intensive just by seeing, okay, like what do you know about an intensive so far? Why are you curious about it? So what are their goals? What challenges have they been facing in kind of traditional weekly therapy? What are their expectations for therapy? Asking questions about that. Because especially with week to week or every other week therapy, I think people have a sense of, there are still some people who, I think everyone wants to get better faster. I think some people, when they're going for more weekly 50-minute sessions, have the sense of like, okay, this is probably going to take a bit. Right? I'm probably going to be there for a few months, maybe a year. Maybe I've already been in therapy for years. This is just me finding a new therapist. So they kind of already have those as expectations. But what expectations do they have for a therapy intensive? Because here's the thing is like, yes, right? It is accelerated therapy. You are going to go further, faster, but it's not necessarily going to be a quick fix or a cure-all. And you want to get that sense of, is that why they're calling? Is that why they're booking the therapy intensive consultation? And it's not a bad thing if they are. That's just where you want to share more of that psychoeducation around. This is an accelerated format of therapy. It works really well for people. Research shows it. Once you start getting experience doing therapy intensives, you can also speak to obviously like de-identified, aggregated information about like I typically see clients move through so much processing in 3 hours, 4 hours, 1 day, 2 day, whatever it is. You can talk about those things, but always be very explicit with them about, what I don't want you to do is have these very high expectations and be let down, knowing that ultimately the brain is going to go wherever the brain goes, even in a very focused, intensive model. And we're doing that because we don't want to get their hopes up, right? I had someone call me who was like, this feels like this is my last chance, or I'm going to give up on therapy. And I had to be honest around, I think this could be a really good fit for you. And I don't want this to be the one last thing that you try and then you give up on therapy, because here's still what can happen even in an intensive format, right? Blocks might still come up. Speaking from like an IFS perspective, those managers, those firefighters, we might still have reasons where it doesn't go according to plan, what's expected, what we know the positive benefits can be from it. So that's a piece where if you're asking that question around what are your expectations, what are you hoping to get out of the intensive experience, that's helpful for you to know, because then you can give psychoeducation, You can co-collaborate on what are going to be your goals, what are going to be the things that we'll likely get to, because that's really important, especially for those of you who are interested in doing like a couples intensive kind of offering, right? A lot of couples want to, again, also move forward through their concerns faster, and you're working with two people, two brains, two nervous systems in the room. So yes, you have a lot of goals, you have a lot of things you want to get to. We're going to work on as much of it as we can, and right, there's still going to be a limit to what we get to. So just making sure that you're offering all that information around with the time that we might book. For example, if I'm doing like a 2-day intensive with a couple versus a 1-day or a 3-day or once a month 1-days, then I'm going to tell them a little bit about like what could you expect to be different between those types of offerings. We might get to this, we may not get to this. You're just giving them that full informed consent of, again, this is accelerated therapy, but it's not magic bullet, quick fix, all of that stuff that people might be looking for. For anyone who's watching live, feel free to let me know if you have any questions as I'm going through all of this. But kind of just a recap so far, so talking about what are their goals, asking them those questions. How have they been challenged in the traditional model of therapy, weekly, bi-weekly? What are their expectations? And then also to be thinking about like, how are you going to tailor your offerings to their needs? So as someone is talking about, I'm struggling with this one incident of trauma that happened and I really need to get over that. You can talk with them about, okay, well, here's the benefit of a 1-day intensive versus a 2-day intensive, whereas someone is coming in for, I've got multiple experiences of trauma, kind of goes back all the way to childhood. I've always felt that not important, neglected in my family, right? Again, setting those expectations around, how I might tailor to you, because that's part of this kind of premium service that you would be offering too, is that it is a treatment plan for them, right? It's not just saying, well, everyone is fixed in 1 day. You can do a lot of progress in 1 day, but especially for those who have longer term struggles, who have a lot of things that are interfering with their functioning, then your tailored offering is, I'm really going to recommend that we do, more than 1 day, or that we do 90 minutes weekly, or whatever that's going to look like for the kind of offerings that you want to offer. That's what's ultimately going to be really helpful, is that they know you are hearing them, you are giving them your best recommendation, your clinical judgment around, here's what I see be really effective, and, right, that's your offering. It's up to them of how they make the choice either way. Some of them are going to be like, yeah, let's do 2-3 days back to back every other day. That also depends on your schedule, how you're fitting this into your schedule. But some people are going to want one version of it. Some people are going to want a different version of that. Sometimes they might make that differentiation and that choice by price. But again, it's your clinical duty, your clinical judgment around, this is what I think is going to be the most effective for you. We can do this, but there might be these limitations. And that's okay, right? It's all about informed consent and choice. So some of the typically asked questions that I get during an intensive an intensive consultation are, and I've got all this information on my website, but some people don't read all of it. That's okay. I know I don't always read all details of a website either. But some typically asked questions is just like, how is this different than the weekly therapy model? How can I expect it to be different in terms of what I experience? How long am I going to be in therapy? Like, do I have to do 3 hours once a week for a year? What is that going to look like? So in part, a lot of that is going to come from the more that you get experience with it, but also the more you talk with other people who do therapy intensive models, it's going to give you a little bit of a better sense around, in general, what does this look like? So what I tell a lot of couples is, in general, I see a lot of people start with a 2-day intensive. Maybe we have an hour follow-up after that, but really that's how I'm seeing people. They might transition into weekly therapy with someone else. They might feel like they no longer need it. With my individual intensives, I see a lot of people really benefit from 2, 3, or 4 day intensives. And then people are either transitioning back into their normal therapist that they meet with routinely, or people are feeling like they're not really needing any therapy support anymore. So all I can really give is, this is my experience, this is what I've seen, but as always, it's everyone's favorite and least favorite answer of it depends, right? It's always going to depend how long for an individual they will need to be in therapy, even an intensive therapy model. So that kind of comes back to that point of, what are their goals? What are their expectations? If someone is coming in for, I need to process this one thing, we can probably get to that in 1 or 2 days, right? 3 to 4 hours, or however you would structure your intensive offering. You can do a lot of really good work in that time. But the more people have to process, then that means also the more that they need, but that doesn't all have to be in an intensive model, right? The intensive focus can be X, whereas in their weekly therapy, they're talking about Y. So you can help them kind of make that choice and that differentiation between what's going to be most helpful, how do we spend this time, especially because I've had some people who do make the decision based very much on their financial budget, which is totally fine and that makes sense. But if someone is saying, I can really only afford this 1 day intensive, what can we do with that? Then I share with them, right? Okay, you've got these goals. I think there's maybe a common thread there. We can maybe start with that. Or I would maybe pick one thing, see how the intensive goes, and then if we have time for that second, that third thing, we could definitely come back to that. But you sharing with them, it's not that we can't make it work, it just might look a little bit different. So how is it different? How often can I expect to be in these intensives? How long can I expect to be in these intensives? That's a question that a lot of people will answer. So again, a lot of it is it depends. Sometimes I'll ask people if they just want to how about we just start with a 1 or a 2 day and then we kind of see how that goes. And again, honestly, that's really all I've had to do with most people. I think the most I've done is 4 90-minute appointments with someone. So people are going to benefit from things differently and depending on what their goal is and what their expectations are. People will also ask questions about, well, what can I expect my outcome to be? How should I kind of prepare? Am I going to be kind of really tired and fatigued and kind of just need to go home and pass out afterwards? So again, if you are planning on basically just doing what you do in the traditional model of therapy and just extrapolating that into intensive therapy, you already kind of know, right? If you're already doing EMDR, brain spotting, somatic experiencing, IFS work, Gottman, EFT, whatever you're doing, you kind of already know, well, how do people feel afterwards? And in general, it's pretty safe bet to say you're probably going to be really tired because 3 to 4 to sometimes my couples intensives are 5-hour days. It's a lot of therapy in 1 day. So you can pretty much guarantee you're probably going to be pretty tired. Some people, because they process through so much stuff that's been weighing them down, we'll talk about having a little bit more energy. So you might expect that. But in general, right, these expected outcomes of what might happen to your energy level, how might your sleep be impacted, how might you feel with any physical side effects. Again, you kind of already know that from work you're already doing with your clients, but you can just expect them to be maybe a little bit more pronounced because someone's doing hours of that kind of processing. And then 2, I tell people, there's a lot of processing that's happening in these 90 minutes, 3 hours, 4 hours. A lot of that happens in our time. A lot of that's going to happen outside of our time. Even more of it's going to happen outside our time. So in terms of that expected outcome, again, I tell people it depends, but from what I see, so many people make such significant progress after the first 2 or 3 days when everything's kind of settling in, and then we see, right? That's why I have follow-up calls after the intensive so that I can check in with what was their outcome, what did they make progress with, where are they still feeling stuck? Do they need another intensive? Do they bring this back to their individual therapist? Are there some self-help resources? Whatever that might be. People will also ask questions around what's the cost. So even if you do have on your website, a 1-day package is this, a 3-day package is that, people are still going to ask questions because again, either they didn't get to that part or just because they forgot. Maybe they're contacting a bunch of different people about these kind of offerings. So just be prepared to talk about cost on the call and to be confident talking about those costs on the call. Because again, if you are putting together a really solid offering where you're talking, here's this intake appointment, here's this intensive appointment, here's our follow-up appointment. If you're doing things like having client workbooks, self-care kits, if you're incorporating other modalities like massage therapy, if you're doing all of that, you are charging a good amount of money for it. My minimum that I charge is $2,200, and sometimes it goes over $5,000. So people are going to want to know, what is the cost? They're going to expect it to be high. Some people will still be surprised by how much it costs, but that's where you can kind of, again, do some of that psychoeducation around. There's actually some research that shows this is going to save you money in the long run. It is a big commitment and investment up front, but here's all the costs that you'd save by not taking all this time off of work, not hiring all this childcare when you come to therapy and all those things. But for you to feel really confident in, this is the number, or based on this package, depending on if we're doing a 1-day or if we're kind of seeing, if we do 1 day and then we see how it lands and then we do another 1 day, you kind of just want to have that ready to go, ready to share with that client. So I always have an Excel sheet up where I've kind of laid out really quickly. I can just type in some numbers of, okay, if they want to do 2 days and that's on a weekday versus a weekend, because I charge different rates for those, then I just have a formula that'll pop up for me and then I can share with the client. It'll probably be somewhere between $3,300 and $4,000 for that package that you're interested in. So be ready just to answer those questions. Let the clients take time to think about that. A lot of people will need to think about that, even if they are interested, they're invested, they're like, yep, I just need to check the bank account, see if I need to move some things around, see how I'm going to make it work. But most people who really want to do this will make it work. So those are some of the typically asked questions that I see. So how is this different from normal individual 1 hour a week therapy, couples 1 hour a week therapy? What's the cost? How often should I be expected to do them? And what can I expect from my outcomes? So all of that information is from people who is to be expected to be talked about for people who are already making the call, kind of knowing that that's what they're booking the consult for. So it's a whole different thing if someone thinks that they're calling for weekly therapy. So there's a way that you can listen to what their goals are, what their needs are, and talk with them about that. For payment options of either paying in full or having like payment plans, I always say, do what feels most comfortable for you. What I'll do is I at least require, especially if I'm doing a 2-day or a multiple day, I ask for half of that payment as a deposit, because then it means I'm booking that in my schedule and I'm not offering that to any other people, which means that if that couple, that individual ends up not coming, then I've lost money because I haven't offered that to other people. So I always ask for half upfront when they submit the paperwork, ideally at least a week in advance, probably more. No one's had a problem with that. And then otherwise it's pay at the time of the appointment, or if I'm doing for the individual ones where I do an intake and then the intensive and then the follow-up, then I charge per kind of appointment. One thing that I think is really helpful that I learned is always charge at the beginning of the appointment, because I did a 2-day couples intensive. I charged the half of it beforehand, and then I waited until the very end after the couple. It was a virtual one, so they signed off. I tried to charge the rest of the half and the card got declined. So then I had to worry about getting back in contact with them, because obviously I didn't want to do a full weekend of work and not get paid for it. So figure out what feels most comfortable for you. in terms of if you do have payment options, because yeah, you want to get paid for all the work that you're doing. So you have different options there. So yeah, if someone is calling just for weekly therapy and they just, didn't even know you had an intensive offering, still talk about it with them. Especially if you want to be having more of an intensive offering, you see the benefit that it's doing for the clients that you are working with intensively, let them know of like, yep, here would be some of the days and times I have available for weekly therapy. I also want to let you know about a different offering that I'm really incorporating into my practice. I'm seeing a lot of clients move forward in their goals much more quickly. People find that it's a lot more flexible for their schedule. They benefit a lot more quickly. So even just like dropping those seeds of, hey, this is an option too. Again, there are a lot of people who, unless they're calling about an intensive, unless they know what an intensive is, they've never heard of it before. And a lot of people like knowing that it's an option. So even if they're calling in and saying, yep, I'm just looking to meet with someone once a week, just kind of talk about some things, work through some things, just let them know, right? All you're doing is saying, this is an offering that I have. They can ask more questions, probably the similar questions that people who are booking for an intensive are asking, like, well, how is that different? What does that mean to work intensively? Well, what would be the cost of that? Probably all going to still be the same questions. And then you can give them time to decide, right? Of like, oh, I know this is maybe new information. You can take some time to think about it. Let me know if any questions come up. Know that it would also be an option too, because I've done this with clients. We can start in that weekly model, and then if it ever feels like we're kind of stuck somewhere, or you're wishing that we can move through things a little bit more quickly, we could always do like a 1-day intensive just to kind of see what that would look like. So I encourage you to at least bring it up to people if it is something that you're interested in offering in your practice, because the worst thing that could happen is someone's going to be like, no, that doesn't sound like that's for me, or no, not right now, or maybe, but not now. That's the worst that's going to happen. But the more that you put it out there as an option, as something that you're offering, something that you're confident offering, the more people are going to say yes, the more that you're going to book, the more you're going to make, the less you have to work. So that is my goal for you all. I hope that you feel a little clearer on some of the ways that you navigate those consultation calls, both with some questions that might be asked. And again, go back to last week's video about the assessment, different questions that you want to ask if you didn't get a chance to watch that one. But otherwise, that is all that I have for today. Feel free to drop any last questions in the chat if any are coming up, or send me a message afterwards. But otherwise, that is it. Thank you for spending some time with me today, and I will look forward to seeing people at the next live next week. Thank you so much, everyone. Feel free to reach out for any support. Bye.